Yeah.
So all the mystery around this is a long synopsis, but lo and behold, the big secret is why she did what she did. And the bottom line is she worked for my family 2 years. She didn't want to be found and she didn't want to be found out. She had a secret and a big secret. And so it was my job after she passed. She wanted this world to know that you can reinvent yourself and find
Mhm.
joy and happiness.
Welcome to Story Power, a bi monthly podcast where my guests and I chat about stories and creativity in all different styles and formats. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and my goal is to promote what Dale Carnegie stated in his famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He said, instead of condemning people, let's try to understand them. Let's try to figure out why they do what they do. That's a lot more profitable and intriguing than criticism, and it breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. To know all is to forgive all. It's my firm belief that the goal of most creative people is to try to understand themselves and others. That's what makes artwork of all kinds so compelling. But more than that, the personal stories of my guests promote understanding as well. Roger C. Schenck, a cognitive scientist, said, human beings are not ideally set up to understand logic. They are ideally set up to understand stories. It's my hope that Story Power will help us understand each other better by sharing the stories of my guests. Welcome, Story Power listeners. This is episode 128, and I'm talking to Sandra Schnakenburg, who is a fabulous author of the book, The Housekeeper's Secret. And I read it. I think I probably read it in about 5 or 6 days because it is so great. So, Sandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Lucinda. This is amazing to be on here. I'm
I'm
excited. I can't believe how many episodes you've had.
this is my 5th year.
That's
July
amazing.
is my 5 year anniversary. So, yeah,
Congratulations.
I only do it every other week, though. So I don't have as many as some people who do it, once a week or more than once a week.
Yeah.
But it's so great to talk to you because I've been communicating with your PR person, and it's nice to talk to you in person and talk about your book. Uh, and I feel so glad to know that it took you a long time to write your book because it took me 7 or 8 years to write my first book. So, oh, good. Phew, I'm not alone. Not
Yeah,
alone.
there's
And
this thing that the book is never done, you know? There's this feeling of, oh, I can make it better. And the more you study writing, the more you learn, oh, I could do this chapter different again. I could tweak this. And then you just end up adding so much time to it. But I'm a believer that the book was meant to come out in the world at a certain time, and
right.
only God knows that time. It's God's timing. And it actually came out, I never predicted it, but it was 30 years after Lee's death
Oh,
was the year it was
wow.
published. And it's just touching because that 30-year mark, I kept thinking, oh, maybe it was when Lee turned 100, and
Right.
that would have been 2 years ago. She would have been
Yeah.
102 when it came out.
Mhm.
So I'm like, I missed that deadline and it's not ready and, all this stuff. So I was just trying to control it, but it was not
Right.
controllable. It comes
Yeah,
out exactly when the world needs it. And I'm telling
exactly.
you, the world's gobbled it up and it's just been really fun to get response.
Oh, that's so great. Yes. It must be nice to have a PR person because it's just me and my husband. He's the graphic artist. He's the one who laid the book out and did the maps and stuff
Awesome.
and did the cover. But yeah, it must be nice to have someone helping you do
Yes.
that.
Yes. Well, I couldn't have done it. Obviously, I'd have I mean, the whole process is new to me, really. I'm a corporate finance person for
Yeah.
30 years. And I left my corporate job to fulfill a promise to the housekeeper, Lee,
Yeah.
to write her story. And
Yeah.
I think that was really weighed heavily on my heart. And to the point where I gave up my whole career, but then I gained a career. I gained a new
Mm,
skill set, and I actually love writing. I've always loved writing. I never thought of writing, you know, that I would be, a published author of a well-received book, and I really am excited that the story is received because truly, for all the authors out there or soon to be authors, one of my biggest hurdles was the fear of my story not being received in the way in the
Mm.
light that it was, because it was such a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, loving relationship we had with Lee. But then people in today's world, they try to find, different things to criticize or attack that would be like, societal, equal opportunity or whatever it is. It would be
Yeah.
some thing that would make the story not received holistically from the
Yeah.
heart
Mhm.
story. It's a human spirit story. It's it's
Yeah.
it's all it breaks down the walls of different, of all walls.
Yeah.
Race,
Well, and
culture, education, wealth, background, ancestral, everything. It breaks down all the walls, and
yes.
we become one in this story.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
and that was one of the things that I really liked about the book. Oh, do you want to tell a little synopsis about it before I go start talking about the book? Tell a little.
Yeah, I'll give him a little short synopsis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lee came to our home in 1965 when I was 3.5 as the humble servant, the maid that helped my mom with her 6 children. She was hands full, narcissistic husband who became wealthy overnight. Um, yes. So we have a lot of pressure cooker situation in the house,
Oh,
but we're
yeah.
all appear like the Van Trapp family, all perfect
Mm-hmm.
up on the stairs. Everybody's all pretty in their dress. Lee arrives. We're instructed to be very nice and good because the last maids all left. Anyway, Lee and I formed a relationship instantly, and throughout my life, I felt something you know, curious about her. Like when she came, she said she had no family and there was no husband or son because they were killed in a car accident prior to her arrival. She would never have to go back or run it back to them. And she was just going to be all for, our family and supportive. My mom wanted that because the previous people had problems. But so she fit the the request perfectly. But the only thing is, we didn't know anything about her other than that she lost this husband and son, which their pictures were on the mirror for 30 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And fast forward, which the book starts this chapter, is Lee asked me to write her story on her deathbed. And
Right.
it's a story she always wanted to write during those 30 years. She'd say at the dinner table or wherever, whatever we were doing, I have a story. Nobody will ever believe it. And we just, chuckle. We go, Lee, is that a threat or a promise? What is this story anyway? And she'd just be like, just wait, just wait. We didn't know, but I am very intuitive, and I used to work by her and help her clean and do all this stuff. And I just get really curious. I'm like, if you're the fifth child in your family, you have all these siblings, certainly you have family alive, like nieces and nephews, maybe, like
Mm-hmm.
somebody. And I'd get in trouble every time. Stop. No, you don't ask me anything about my family. Get to work. You keep focusing, like distraction, and then she'd redirect me. And I was, pretty dumbfounded when she asked me to write her story on her deathbed because I said,
Yeah.
I asked you a million times about anything about your family, and you told me nothing. So I'm not really sure I know your story at all, other than you lost your husband and son. And she just looked at me and she said, honey, you're going to figure it out. And you know what? I did. I was the curious, annoying. I was a pesty, annoying little girl that always asked a lot of questions. And it started to gnaw on me after my mom passed away, which was 15 years after Lee. I
Oh,
found
yeah.
I found Lee's urn in my mom's closet.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this the story, oh my gosh, the story. Well, you know what? I'm gonna find those husband and son burial spots. I'll research the heck out of it, and I'll put her ashes with them because she belongs with her loved ones. And I
Mm-hmm.
just thought this is the honorable thing to do. And that was a 2.5 search that went nowhere. And so lo and behold, I was giving up on the whole thing, and until I was just frustrated one day in the dog park, ran into a friend who our dogs played, and the next thing you know, this lovely lady, Vicky, there you
She's
go.
helping you.
Vicky's helping me. And Vicky was some kind of like ex-CIA or something because she goes, I will help you, but you can't ask me how I got the information. And I gave her 3 pieces of information and 2 were incorrect.
Oh,
So,
yes, that's
but that
right.
night she came up with her family, and I knew it was her family because she had told me she had a sister named Hazel,
Uh-huh.
and that was on the family list. And but Lee's name wasn't Lee's name. Lee's birthday wasn't Lee's birthday. It didn't. It said Lee never had got married or had a husband, and it said
Hmm.
there was no children there either.
Yeah.
So all the mystery around this is a long synopsis, but lo and behold, the big secret is why she did what she did. And the bottom line is she worked for my family 2 years. She didn't want to be found and she didn't want to be found out. She had a secret and a big secret. And so it was my job after she passed. She wanted this world to know that you can reinvent yourself and find
Mhm.
joy and happiness. And even though in those days, today I don't know because of background checks and everything,
Right.
but in those days she did that. She pulled it off, and our entire family didn't even know her real name, her real birthday, or who anything about her.
Hmm.
Until now, we know a lot more, and
Yes.
it's heartwarming to think how much love and how much joy she gave our family during those years. But it's also heartbreaking to see what she had suffered. But but she loved the fact that we didn't know her past, I think, because then
Yes.
we could see her for who she was. And I don't think she was ever seen for that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, you didn't have any expectations or preconceived notions about her. Yeah.
exactly. We just wanted
Well,
her to love us. We just wanted her to accept us. We were the
yes.
ones like we were the broken ones. And this is the interesting thing
Hmm.
about the story. We lived in the White Castle. Everything was perfect on the outside, but we were broken on the inside. And here
Hmm.
she was so together on the inside, but she had been through a lot. Her exterior showed it. She had false teeth. She walked funny, like
Right.
something, a lot of bones were broken at one point. There was something that happened to her, but we didn't go there. We just loved her for her heart.
Right. And she
Mhm.
was the stabilizing influence.
She was. She was the
And
words of wisdom in every chaotic, crazy moment in our house. She was the
yeah.
words of wisdom. Mhm.
Yeah. And your mom needed somebody like that. Your mom
Mhm.
needed somebody to not just the children, but your mom needed somebody to lean on too. Yeah.
But my mom was so private, and she would have never gone to anybody. And
Hmm.
Lee was there all the time witnessing things. And Lee had offered up as they got more comfortable with each other. They really loved each other immediately, but they took a while.
Hmm.
And there's this trust that built. And Lee started helping mom, saying, you don't have to take that. You don't
Right.
believe what he says, and you don't have to do that. And you
Hmm.
have rights if you divorce him. You have this and that. And, my mom was just such a beautiful, almost naive woman,
Hmm.
that she just wanted to always do the right thing. She was godly. I always tell everybody she's a mixture of Mother Teresa and Jackie Onassis. She had all the hats, and she was always praying, and she was just believed in, and she had this peace about her, but she was not prepared for what my dad had grown into be. Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought it was one of the things I thought was interesting about the story is, and I don't want to give too much away, but something happened to you that sort of paralleled something that happened to Lee.
Yeah,
It wasn't exactly the same thing, but yes, so she was able to help you through
about
that
that.
terrible traumatic thing that happened to you.
Well, we can
And
talk about that because that's not part of the secret, but it is a part of our built up our relationship that really bonded
yeah,
Lee and I.
yeah.
It is interesting that when I was 13, I was hit by a car riding my bike to school. Car was going between 80 to 100 miles an hour, according to the you know, um, estimates, because we had a jury trial. And it was a miracle I lived. I went above the car and into the windshield. They put the brakes on and came out, and I had a traumatic brain injury. And by the way, I wasn't diagnosed at the time because my
Right.
survival, losing so much blood, I had 250 stitches in my face, and I had just a lot of issues internally. So Lee, as I recuperated and was home a lot, she started noticing I couldn't balance, I couldn't focus, I couldn't speak, all these TBI things. And but there was
Hmm.
I've never heard of the word TBI, okay, until I wrote the book.
Hmm.
Then I'm
Hmm.
researching what happened to Lee, and then I'm realizing all these things that we did because another family member had a TBI, and I was thinking we were doing the same thing. And I'm like, this is what Lee knew exactly what to do, doing puzzles, focusing, helping me clean, kind of like the Karate Kid, right, right and left. We were shining chandeliers and she'd go, nope, shine it better. Shine it. I see a spot. Shine it again. Shine it again. And I was frustrated and angry and like, really? Like, this is exhausting. But she goes, no, this is helping you to get a quality control here that you need to focus on what you're doing, not just get it done to go somewhere else. And she taught me that. And it was just a beautiful thing because that's what got me through and prepared me to go to college in the rest of my life because I was able to focus again. It gradually got better. And in fact, when I went for like my later years in undergraduate school, I started all of a sudden my mind just sort of like connected everything. It just like one day I started to see the light and I was in a fog for about 10 years after the TBI. It was literally a brain fog. And for those of you, if anybody out there is listening and they've ever had brain fog, which is a common thing sometimes if you've had head injury, it's distressing. It's hard because you don't know what to do and you don't know how to conduct your goals or you can't see the clearly on anything.
Yeah. We have a friend who had a brain tumor. It was benign, but she had brain surgery. And so it's kind of the same thing for her. That it's been 10 years or more now since she had the surgery, but she some days it's even a physical thing. She just kind of can't get out of bed almost and do things, and she's 81.
Oh, well, that's even harder.
Or no, maybe she's 82 now. Anyway, yeah, so she has people who come and help her with things and stuff. I mean, a lot of the time she's okay, but there are just days where she just can't really function that day for some reason.
And I do feel like Lee was a godsend because my parents had no idea, and I don't think they ever would have known. And my dad wrote me off. He didn't want me to go to college. I wasn't worth it. I mean, I was, I didn't come off as somebody who was really together because I didn't speak well. And interesting, I'm writing now and I'm speaking. It's like it's God is good, right? But it's like you work at these things that you're weak at, then you become even stronger than you were before.
Right. Well, and Lee must have gone through that same kind of process, and that's how she knew how to help you.
Yes. She didn't speak for years after her incident.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about,
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So when I don't know how much you want to talk about, but I thought when you found out that she was part of this really famous family and the family owned the Melrose Plantation is it in Louisiana?
Yeah.
Yeah, Louisiana. And you went there, I was like, wow, that's so cool. That's, history that we don't know much about.
It's so huge. It is such a special place. In fact, a lot of people are visiting there now after reading the book. I've gotten comments. I go, my husband and I have a tour this summer to go to the place in Chicago, which is in the book, and one in Louisiana. They go, we're doing a tour because of these new locations and the fascination about them and the history involved with them is so mind blowing.
When you went to the hospital in Chicago, it was like, oh, this is creepy. How could she do that? How could she walk through that creepy place? But you were brave.
I was brave because I wanted to see where, I wanted to see and feel what had happened there. And I'd already read enough about it to know that there were some really bad things. And it also, they had probably thousands of babies, fatherless babies that were taken into the world that were conceived there. There was mass graves from tuberculosis, typhoid hit, something was in the water. They had so many people, and the families of these loved ones could only sue and receive $1,000 max for their loved one's death. And it was just they put restrictions on it because there were so many deaths. So as I walked property, it was like, this is the one mass grave where there's like 500 people, and there's another one over here There's another one under the baseball field. I'm like, all these kids are out there playing baseball. They don't know there's people that are buried under that. I was like, wow, this
Yeah.
is mind blowing.
Oh, really? Yeah. But I loved the end though when you finally tracked down some of her family and
Yeah.
were able to give them her ashes. And are you still close? Do you still see them or
As
communicate with
close
them?
as we can be because they're all living their lives. And I think we talk on holidays,
Oh,
Christmases, or,
yeah.
you know, texts, or when the book came out, it was exciting.
Uh-huh.
When we're still planning on putting the remaining of Lee's ashes because we kept some for the World Series,
Oh,
that the
right.
Cubs won, and we wanted to wait till the book was published. So
Yes.
probably this spring we'll go there and we'll try to see if we can coordinate a ball game around, going to put whatever drops we put on Wrigley Field because you
Right.
just wanted just something there. Yeah.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
illegal, totally illegal. And I'm on the radio, wherever I'm on the podcast, but it is something a lot of people do. It's not like going to be like a bag. It's going to be like a drop. So it's not like,
Yeah.
you
Just
can,
a few grains.
yeah, just something to honor her request. That's all.
Yes. Yes. So she was a big baseball fan.
Yeah, her spirit was so lively and high and happy, and she she reached an echelon of joy that nobody in our family had ever reached. And just being around her brought us we gravitated to her when the Cubs game was on because she would just jump out of her chair when there was a hit, or it was just like she would just start cheering and yelling, and we would it was just so like just magnetic. And we all just
Yes.
gravitated the kitchen. We're like, oh, teach me how to keep score. And then she would, get us to take a day off school. And, mom would
Go
call
to
us
the
all
game.
sit, and then we'd go down on the train and go to the Cubs game, and we'd be on TV holding our big, signs. And luckily the teachers were in the class and we were in see.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Oh, but that's so fun. Yeah.
It was the best part of our childhood. Like dad brought a lot of, as you in the story, there's a lot of family stories about trips, but they were always very, under on dad's terms, and very exhausting, and very we were like the laborers.
Right.
Happened. We were really, ordered around. We had dinners at 11 o'clock at night. We could barely stay awake. We were really, but we all, our family is really tight because we went through all that. And we rolled
Hmm.
our eyes because nobody would ever understand if they went on vacation with us what you have to tolerate. It's not a real vacation. I
Right.
didn't really know how to vacation properly until I met my husband. And then
Mhm.
he started like, let's go and just, relax here. I'm like, how do you relax? Like
Right. Yeah. Oh, the one where you guys got hit by
oil
you were
barge.
on the yacht and you got
Yeah,
hit by the freighter. Oh
yeah.
my gosh. That was scary.
It's very
Um,
scary. That was a moment, that could have been a moment of, death
total.
for all of us, really. But thank God, we were looked after, and we got out of
Yeah.
that situation. Yeah,
Yes. And your poor mom though.
I know. She
And
couldn't
you,
swim. She didn't know how to swim, so she always hated going on the water.
oh yeah,
Not fun
really.
for her. Yeah.
Now, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but what happened to your dad after the divorce?
Well, um, my dad really loved my mom. It is a good question because people wonder. And he always sent her flowers on on their anniversary and our birthday. Um, but he ended up, the reason they divorced because a woman came in his life again after the other affair.
Mhm.
And that woman, I can't say much about her on a podcast, but she wasn't really good for dad. And
Mhm.
it actually brought him to his demise eventually. And also he's, you know, much of what he had worked for all his life, had been, issues with that too. So I
Mhm.
think it's just, there's good woman. My mom was such a good woman. I think my dad didn't realize um that, all women aren't the same. I mean, he had five
Right.
girls. God was telling him something, and all the girls were very industrious and they're very smart
Yeah.
and very creative. Like we all have careers and have done, amazing things. And he had one son, my brother,
Mhm. Mhm.
and my brother has had challenges, to say the least. But yeah, we're fighting for my dad right now because we feel like he was very compromised at the end of his life. He was very, very compromised. So he was taken advantage of in many
Oh.
ways. And unfortunately, we're fighting for his rights and his intentions. We're trying to do the best we can as a family. We're
Mhm. Mhm.
just doing what we can with what we have, and we hope
Yeah.
that God will do the rest. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you have people that in your family that you just who are broken and they cause trauma to you, it's so great to see a family come to the place where they can love that person. And, that doesn't mean you have to associate with them all the time, but you can
Mm,
love them and forgive them. And that was
absolutely.
the thing that I thought was so great about the story was you found Lee's family and you were hoping that they would forgive her for not communicating with them for 30 years or however many years it was. But they just seemed so open and happy to know what had happened to her and that
Right.
she had been happy.
Yeah, that's all they cared about is that she wasn't dead in a gutter and that she had lived out her life and people loved her and she loved them.
Mhm.
That made them so happy. And that was really a beautiful heart. It's like they had a part of Lee. They were like a part of Lee because she was that
Mhm.
good too. Even though they didn't know her, we
Mhm.
made these memory books and all the pictures of her so they could see how much we loved her and how happy she was with us. And it made it, we were concerned like if they would retaliate, like, wow, you got the benefit of my mom that I never knew.
Mhm.
We were
Mhm.
sort of innocent bystanders too, because we didn't know she had other family. We didn't know
Right.
anything about her.
Right.
So we were just trying to, I mean, she was just such a gift. It was almost like a divine appointment that she came
Mhm.
to our house. Like there was, and that's what the book, you kind of see that when you read the whole story. It's like God had a plan. That's why
Mhm.
she didn't die in the previous chapter of her life. And
Mhm.
maybe he used her, who she became from that awful stuff. She used that for good because God uses
Mhm.
evil for good. And
Mhm.
and it was so much love. And all she wanted was to love a family and raise a family, which she got that. She got that
Mhm.
whole thing. She experienced every, stage of our life, first
Mhm.
kids, going to the communion, everything we did. She was there right by her side. And she was like our mother. When Mother's Day came, we always, celebrated with her. And mom loved
Mhm.
that. She wasn't like, oh, I'm the mom. She loved that. But we also forgave my dad. I think, especially now that we're
Mhm.
dealing with the aftermath of his, estate and death, we start to realize that he was so compromised, and we also forgive him for not seeing because he was so manipulated. So he's like, there's a lot of forgiveness there, like that, like just like
Yeah.
these kids forgave, their mother, we forgave our dad, like through
Mhm.
this next thing, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was reading the book, I was thinking, I wonder if he was bipolar or something, undiagnosed.
For sure he was. I mean, he was probably like, how they have a cross section of stuff, and
Mhm.
he was definitely bipolar. He had, yeah, uncontrollable tempers and tantrums and anger, and
Mhm.
but so angry, and then when he got older, and they started drugging him and stuff, like the people around him, and he didn't know about it, but he was very much drugged. He started to soften, but he was almost softened to a delirious thing. He was delusional with it. Like he would say stuff that wasn't true, or we'd think stuff,
Mhm.
and he was making plans for things that would never even be possible. And you could see he was living in like a fairy world.
Mhm. Mhm.
And he was a dreamer always, but yeah, he was definitely undiagnosed. And narcissism, which is very common today in our society, he in those days, he wasn't educated, he dropped out of high school at
Right.
16, and he
Oh,
just became kind of full of himself with becoming wealthy early. Like I was born 10 years into their marriage and he was already a millionaire at
yeah.
that. So I never knew like them struggling where my older sisters were 9 or 10 years,
Mhm.
younger. They knew dad and mom struggling, mom working for the company, building it up, you know,
Mhm.
cutting coupons to be able to get the, the deals so they could
Mhm.
feed the family. It was very strong. It was very much a, you know, day-to-day process. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, wow. Yeah. I was going to ask, did you ever find out who the picture of the man was that Lee had that she said was her husband? Did you
Never
ever find out who that was?
way of finding out. There are clues in that picture. It says "Love You, Squeak" at the bottom in pencil and pen. And then it has a military outfit on that looks like it's a military outfit from 1910 or something, like a fighter pilot outfit.
Oh.
Wearing it, and I tried to zoom into all the different things on his coat and find out what that year, but it's very early in the 1900s. So I think she got that picture like at a Goodwill or something, like, in an album or some kind of random thing,
Okay.
because there's no connection to that picture to anything.
Mhm. Mhm.
That was her story, that she
Mhm.
had to fall. And the reason she never came clean is because she lied to my mom. That was the big lie to get the job.
Mhm.
She had no family and that she had lost her family, and the maid agency backed her because they had to disclose that she was hospitalized.
Mhm. Mhm.
So they said she went into shock when she lost her family and she was hospitalized. And it was kind of like a requirement for them to disclose that. So they fulfilled it by this fabricated story.
Mhm.
And then, when you unveil that whole thing, it just becomes kind of a shock because I stared at those pictures for 30 years.
Yeah.
Wow, you married that man, and
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
how did that whole story happen? And it was just, I was always wondering why she didn't talk about the date, like her wedding day or the kid's
Mhm.
birthday, or like things
Mhm.
that were big dates for her that we could kind of celebrate over 30 years.
Mhm.
But she didn't talk about any sacred dates, and even her birthday wasn't even her date, her birth date. And my aunt
Oh.
Di was onto that. My auntie Di was a little bit of a psychic astrologer lady, and she read all the signs, and she goes, "You are not a Capricorn, on no
Oh,
way."
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Lee used to just say, "Oh, that whole thing is hogwash anyway." It was just cute.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, well, yeah. So there are so many ins and outs to the story that you've just got to read it. People just have to read it because I kept going, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh."
Yeah.
From, chapter to chapter. And I was just so touched that all of you loved her so much
Oh, so much.
and how much she contributed to your family.
Oh, yeah. She gave us this unconditional love. Like, she didn't,
Mhm.
if we behaved bad or got in trouble, she still loved us in a way that was like, what did you learn from that?
Mhm.
In a very
Mhm.
healthy manner, rather
Mhm.
than taking your dignity away or doing
Mhm.
something or saying something like, punishing was so destroying one's confidence.
Mhm.
She had a healthy way of, she was very bright, very smart lady. And she always was doing crossword puzzles, always reading, always watching movies. She was very
Mhm.
tied to what was going on in the world.
Mhm.
Aged with her baseball, but she had her fixed items. Like, she lived within the boundary of puzzles. Like, you say, a puzzle has an outline,
Right.
you fill it in. If you stepped out of the outline with a question that had to do with her past or anything that didn't fit with the puzzle inside the boundary,
Mhm.
she'd get angry like no other. Like, she'd really get angry. And so I realized, like, her Christmas list every year was the same. Her birthday list was the same every year. She always wanted the same thing. She set her image and her desires to be within the boundaries of
Mhm. Mhm.
wanted us to know about her.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, when you had the conversation with the man who worked at the hospital, it seemed like how could he have worked there all those years? He, as I recall, he didn't seem very emotional about it, and maybe that was his, you know.
Yeah. I mean, in those days, though, I mean, to his defense, as the stable force in his family. He was 30 years, again, 30 years, here we go, working for an institution
Mhm.
that, paid for his insurance and his Social
Yes.
pretty.
Yeah.
And that's what he said. I said, what'd you like most about his job? He goes, I like my insurance,
Yeah.
because his wife got MS later and has,
Oh, I forgot that. That's
yeah, and
right.
he did what he did, but you have to understand too, he didn't know that it was before the times they knew X-rays were damaging to unborn children.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he didn't know that. Like he didn't understand that. Like he didn't want to, and imagine if he did feel what he had caused, he'd be a basket case. Instead,
Yeah.
he was like the lector at the church, all these years. He was like the prominent guy in the community. Then he's
Mm-hmm.
working at the prominent hospital, which employed most everybody in the town.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
he was, doing a job that he was told what to do, and he did it. He didn't even
Mm-hmm.
question if it was right or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well, I think that was kind of the time period too.
it was.
Um,
And like,
my dad, yeah, my dad worked at lots of different jobs. He was a machinist, so he'd get laid off and then he'd go to another job, and then he, so he didn't work at one location for 30 years.
right.
And my mom didn't either. She worked for the telephone company for a lot of years, but before it got all broken up. But yeah, it wasn't the same for them. But those people who that's their security, I can kind of see that. Yeah, that's their security.
Dick's kids contacted me and sent an email and said a friend got a hold of your book and they told me our dad is in it, and we don't like the way he's portrayed. And I said, and I just told him, I go, I met with your dad. He was a lovely man. I go, I interviewed him. I asked him if he wanted me to use his name. He did. In fact, he wanted to start a tour of Mantino Hospital. So
Oh
people, just like people are going there now,
yeah.
he
Uh-huh.
wanted to come to Mantino as like a, you know, um, entertainment, like something to do. These young kids don't know what to do anymore. They just sit
Right.
around, don't do anything. Where they can come and take a ride to Mantino and take a tour through the ghost building.
Right.
And it's totally a freak out thing because there are like spirits there. It's just crazy. But
Mm-hmm.
all that, he thought that would be so good for our community. And so I wrote him back and I said, I have emails here. Your dad approved everything and he's really excited about the story. My only regret was that he didn't read the story. In fact, his interview was a lot more detailed, which didn't portray him even worse. And I didn't want to
Oh,
do him or the
right.
family that I didn't know. I wanted to just tell it like it was and be because I
Mm-hmm.
have to, cut and edit everything.
Right.
I was just careful because he just the point was he was doing his job
Right.
and he was supporting his family and he needed insurance and everything worked
Right.
out. So that's
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, well, I mean, we grow in awareness as time goes on. So, yeah, yeah. He was an interesting because that's what I thought. I felt like he didn't really understand
Mhm.
the impact that it was having on the people who were in the hospital.
No, he
Or
didn't at
he
all.
didn't, yeah. It's not that he didn't, it wasn't that he wasn't a caring person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, yeah.
But there were other things that aren't in the book, or maybe they might have been in a subtle way, is that when World War II came and they had to get more people for register for the draft, they had pulled the nurses too, because they need nurses to come to help with
Right.
the injuries. So they had pulled all these staff from Mantino and they sent them into the war and drafted them. So there was no help now. They had all these psychiatric patients.
Oh, yeah.
And they ended up going to the high school in Mantino and said, hey, if you're 18, you have a job instantly you can be a nurse aide and just help. And they even pulled some of the patients that were in better
Mhm.
mindset, like Lee.
Mhm.
I believe Lee was a nurse aide.
Mhm.
'Cause he was actually, and that's what I got from Dick is that she helped with the program there
Yeah.
for a while
Mhm.
because she was a nice person and she
Mhm.
didn't ever cause any problems and that they just needed help. But there was people like 18-year-olds coming out of high school and they were giving meds to patients and handling major therapies which there was no training for.
Right. Yeah.
Really chaotic. If you think
Mm.
about it, that would never happen today.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, I can see if they're understaffed and they needed help. I can see why they did that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, at the times, it probably seemed, well, but they probably needed to be trained of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So where did she go after the hospital? The mental
So
hospital?
after she was released, after 13 years, she went to
Mm-hmm.
Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, had a nursing home, a senior nursing home,
Oh.
took in people that were kind of adjusting back to society. And she worked there for years, like years, and she was loved it. But that was part of, she was living in a, like a safe house,
Mm-hmm.
free,
Mm-hmm.
working at this place, volunteering. I think when you work there, you get the free housing kind of thing. So she was
Mm-hmm.
all dependent on the program to adjust and acclimate to society, work, live, all that. And then eventually, when that program was over, she found her way back to Chicago, and she ended up staying at the YMCA homeless shelter.
Mm-hmm.
That's when she applied for the maid job at our house.
Mm-hmm.
And
So oh, I'm sorry, what?
so that's, I think she was one of her first, maybe first, but when we heard about her, maybe maybe we weren't her first interview, because maybe she got rejected a few times because she was honest about her background, and
Mm-hmm.
then they realized she had to lie about it, and that's how, my mom
Mm-hmm.
just was so excited about having her. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking that the interim place between the mental hospital and your house must have been where she started to develop the doing them puzzles and all of that to
I think
help her
freedom in the mental, and baseball too. I think she learned baseball in the
in the
mental.
mental hospital.
How
Yeah.
like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was all about baseball. It
Mm-hmm.
was like I think they do a lot of puzzles in those places too to keep people
Mm,
busy, and
mm,
it helps the mental patients if they just focus. So I
mm-hmm,
think a lot of the stuff she did was geared toward what she had learned there.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think the nursing home was more about caring for others. And she called herself a nurse. Like when I skinned my knee or a bee bit me
Yeah.
or when I was young, she would be like, well, since I'm a nurse, I can take care of you. And I was
Yeah.
like, it's such a great thing that you're a nurse, Like I'm like
Uh-huh.
thinking, but she never went to nurse school. I mean, but she called herself a nurse because that's what they called them at this, now I know, the senior living place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she probably had some sort of training there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Probably not official, but just there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for talking to me. Do you have anything else you want to say about your experience and where you
Well,
are now with the book?
One of the things I want to say about the book is that one of the things is, the message I'm sure Lee would love to send out to the world was like, it's not what happens to you in your life that separates you from people. It's what you do with what happens to you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is a big story about what Lee picked up from her bootstraps, made a life, and made a good life the best she could, and was very loved, and then gave love.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great message that she would want the world to know, to say, if I can do it, you can do it, even though we're in different times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and other than that, I'm where I'm at is I'm just continuing my work, and I'm hoping to write another book. Um I've got it in
Oh,
me. Yeah, it's just a matter of time and space where I get that going.
oh, that's so great, though. Good for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look forward
Oh,
to it.
thank you. Thank you for talking to me because I loved the book. I loved it.
Thank you.
And yeah, and
Writing
it's,
the review. Thanks for writing that review on Goodreads and Amazon or whatever you did, because that's awesome. Because I like the world to know, with an author, a first time author, those things mean a lot.
yeah, really, they do. I know it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, but I mean, I don't read memoir very often, but this one was so fascinating.
Mhm.
And I've had another guest who was a memoirist, and she had been in the Peace Corps. So hers was all about her Peace Corps years. And that was fascinating too. So I guess I might have to start picking up more memoirs to read.
They do drag you to other people's story, but my story was like read like fiction. And I think
Hmm.
that's the secret to memoir too, because Memoir could be like gut wrenching, to walk somebody through like their worst scenario. But
Mhm.
in this story, we kind of stayed in movement. It kept moving forward to
Mhm.
another situation, and then you find yourself here, and you find yourself there, and you're
Mhm.
still the thread is still there. You still are seeing Lee and everything. You're
Mhm.
seeing all these issues because some memoirs are just about like alcoholism or drug addiction,
Mhm. Mhm.
divorce, but this is about everything. Like it has
Right.
multiple issues. And, so I've had different podcasts that address like just TBI or just
Mhm.
narcissism, or just
Mhm.
eating disorder, like all these different issues. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, yeah, right. I forgot about the eating disorder problem. Yeah. But
When
yes, well, she's the through line.
hmm
She's
absolutely.
she's the through line. So yeah, I can see why you structured it the way you did. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was a tough book to structure, I'll tell you that. But that was the biggest challenge of all.
Mhm.
And but I'm really happy the way it turned out. I think it flows enough so that people can connect the dots and really feel. I think the point
Mhm.
is to see it as a human spirit story,
Mhm.
and that it is a positive ending, it is a
Mhm.
positive light, that
Mhm.
somebody actually brought light to the world from the dark
Yes,
and shined
definitely.
upon this whole family that was suffering.
Yes.
Yet the
Yes.
suffering she had gone through, she had
Mhm.
endured her own
Mhm.
self. Mhm.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Sandra, so much for being my guest.
Linda, for having me.
I loved it. And go read the book, The Housekeeper's Secret. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend and give us a rating and/or review on your favorite podcast app. It will help people find us. I invite you to join my Patreon community at patreon.com/storypower, all one word. Or if you like, you can subscribe to Story Power on Apple Podcasts. It's my aim to build a community where we discuss the stories we love and talk about what we learned from them. I offer extra audio content and story suggestions to my patrons on both platforms. Remember, as Philip Pullman said, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. Let's spread the story love. Until next time, this is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. Thanks for listening.